Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ray Tampa Podcast. Our podcast offers bold commentary on various subject matters with a laser-like focus on the truth. My name is Ray Tampa. I'm the host of the Ray Tampa Podcast. We have in the studio two talented and intelligent gentlemen, Mr. Russell Cato and Mr. Jamie Wilson III, my co-hosts. Also, we're honored and pleased to have with us Pastor Dr. Basha Jordan, author of The Pipe and the Pulpit. Dr. Jordan is here to share information about his addiction, his book, and an article that appeared in the Tampa Bay Times newspaper on October 23rd, 2023. Dr. Jordan, welcome to the Ray Tampa Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, certainly we're pleased that you're here, as stated earlier. As stated earlier, the Tampa Bay Times published an article written by Jack Prador that was titled, quote, "Deadly drug overdoses are dropping in some places, but not in Tampa Bay," end of quote. Mr. Prador offered plenty of interesting data, and that should give us all reason to pause and reflect. Mr. Prador offered two sentences early in his article that had to grab the reader's attention about the sad state of affairs in our Tampa Bay community. He said, quote, "Last year, 1,583 people died of drug-related deaths in Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco counties, more than double the fatalities compared to 5 years ago. Officials, counselors, and advocates say Tampa Bay's numbers are alarming and worse than national and statewide figures. Furthermore, Mr. Prador indicated that Florida ranks second in the nation in drug overdose deaths, according to the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The state reported more than 7,800 deaths in 2021. No doubt, these statistics are sobering. Families and communities are devastated with the loss of each of these lives. Lots of questions beg for answers regarding our region and our state's unflattering statistics. Unflattering statistics. Dr. Jordan's personal experience with addiction and his successful rehabilitation will potentially shed some much needed insight to this problem. For the benefit of our audience, I'm going to read a statement from Dr. Jordan's promotional card for context. Quote, "The Pipe and the Pulpit tells the true story of an addicted inner city, highly educated pastor who got caught up in alcohol and cocaine abuse, but found hope through a tried and proven way," end of quote. To begin, we ask you, Dr. Jordan, to share with us where you were born and educated.
I was born in Welch, West Virginia, 1947. My father moved around, seeing that he was a Methodist preacher. He started preaching in the early 1900s. He graduated from Gammon Theological Seminary in 1919, and his first pastorate he was paid for a month's services, a side of bacon and a bushel of meal, and rode horseback to his 4 churches. He moved to Baltimore. That's where he met my mother, Doretha Jordan. And I was, even though he moved around Maryland, state of Maryland and Virginia, I was raised up in Baltimore, actually beginning. So from 1960 until I went to seminary, Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. In 1977. But most of my time was spent in Maryland, in Baltimore.
Okay, so your education is at that particular seminary.
Well, I graduated from Morgan State University in 1970.
Okay.
And then when I got the call to go into ministry, and went to Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C., where I got my Master's of Divinity in 1980. And then 2 years later, I went to work on my doctorate of ministry at Drew University in Madison, New Jersey, where I got that in 1984.
Excellent. Excellent.
Right.
Okay. Dr. Jordan, for discussion, what are some of the many ways an individual might initially find themselves addicted to drugs?
Well, addiction in and of itself is known as obsessive and compulsive behavior. One of the ways in which an individual can become addicted is through the genes. Their mother may have been an alcoholic, mother may have been a drug addict, even though in the recovery field, we denote alcohol is a drug. The statement has been made that many become confused about that. But as I mentioned it in my book, Beyond the Pipe and the Pulpit, which is my second book, that alcohol is the most widely used drug in America today.
Mm-hmm.
But by usage, it sneaks up on you like a snake in the grass. We can become addicted to a person. We can become addicted to a place. We can become addicted to a thing. But when individuals in America refer to addiction, their mind normally goes straight to drugs, which allows a lot of people to be a practicing addict and not know it. Just because you don't use a drug or because you don't drink alcohol does not mean you cannot become addicted to sex, food, the movies, golf. I ride a motorcycle and I have to be careful because I ride every day. I can become addicted to riding a motorcycle. But through the genes, through usage, those are the main ways in which an individual can become addicted.
Okay. I was thinking along the lines, casual use can eventually get you addicted. Casual use, prescription drugs can along the way get you addicted, and things like that. And you're focusing on genetics, which is fine. But I want to go to this next question, and you answered it in part already. Is it factual that most people start with less addictive drugs and gradually gravitate toward the harder, more addictive drugs?
Yes, that's true.
That's true.
It's true. Unless an individual starts off with I would say a more addictive drug. For instance, heroin is extremely addictive from the beginning. But normally, in today's society, an individual may start off with another drug. my drug of choice, my entrance drug was a cigarette. Cigarettes are highly addictive. However, people do not even consider that normally. When we think of a gateway drug, many people think of marijuana as a gateway drug. But I was talking, our outreach ministry, Hope Alive Outreach, deals with giving hope to people who suffer from the disease of addiction, primarily drugs and alcohol. And so the majority of the drugs and alcohol that are consumed in America are consumed by the middle class, the upper class, the wealthy. And the majority of the drugs that are sold in America are not sold on the street corner or in an alley, but in suburbia and in gated communities, the rich and famous. And when they die from an overdose, you don't normally hear about it. It's normally recorded as something else.
Good points, and I'm going to come back to that at a later point in the discussion. Dr. Jordan, talk to us about your journey. You've shared a little already, but how old were you when you first started abusing alcohol and cocaine?
Well, let me back up. Let me back up a little bit. When we talk about there's a difference in abuse and casual using. You had mentioned how an individual can become addicted to prescription drugs. There's a process normally, the same way with nicotine. In order for an individual to become addicted to anything, they have to first of all begin using it, and then it will increase. My first encounter with cigarettes came from the house in which I lived. My father smoked cigarettes. He was a pastor, and my father was very neat, always dressed with a suit and tie, three-piece, gold chains, watch, and he had a cigarette case, silver case that he kept in his pocket. And when he would flip that case open and go in there and pull out a cigarette and put it in his cigarette holder, he had a silver and black cigarette holder. So therefore the cigarette was sticking out like that, and it looked what I'll call real slick. But my father was a very, very frugal man. And he didn't make much money, but he knew how to make a penny holler. Really. Okay. My father taught me how to handle money, how to make money, how to save money. So therefore, when he would buy a carton, he didn't buy cigarettes by the pack. He bought them by the carton. And before he even opened the carton, he would take his homemade butcher knife and take that carton of cigarettes right in half. And so therefore, rather than having 10 packs, he had 20 packs. And those cigarettes were that long, which he would put in his holder. And the reason why I'm saying this is because whoever is listening to this, we have to be careful as parents or as adults what we leave lying around the house. I began to smoke my father's cigarettes, taking them out of his little pack, and going in the bathroom or someplace out in the woods, because we were raised up in the country, and smoking it, imitating him. And I was 11 years of age when I started smoking in 1958. I got clean and sober in 1988. And between 1958 and 1988, there's 30 years. And in those 30 years, my drug use progressed from cigarettes to alcohol. My first drink of alcohol took place. We moved to Baltimore, and my father was in the church preaching, and somehow or another, I slipped out of church on this particular Sunday morning, and went outside and we lived next door to the church. And right across the street was a group of men that were sitting on the steps, and they were drinking Thunderbird. And they said, "Preacher boy, come in." And so I walked over to them, and they poured me a half a glass of Thunderbird with orange juice. And I drank it because I had respect for them because they were older.
Yes.
Back then, the process was in, the brothers had their head in process, conch, and so had gaiters on and that sort of thing. And so I drank it, didn't know what I was doing, didn't like it, went back into church, and my use of alcohol increased when I went to high school.
So how old were you when you had that drink, that first drink?
That first drink, I was 12, 13 years old.
12
or 13 years of age. 12 or 13 years of age.
Okay.
Okay. But let me, I want to speak to even though your questions are very poignant and very pointed, this is 2023. And in 2023, by me ministering and to individuals who suffer from the disease of addiction, both on both sides, those who are in recovery and those who are also still using, like in the church, the primary purpose of a pastor is to go into all the world and seeking out sinners and getting them saved. In this recovery arena, my purpose is to seek those individuals who are using and the individuals who are young and not yet using and prevent them from using.
Correct.
2 weeks ago, I was talking with a young man. He was 45, 50 years of age. In his testimony was, and it's a white man. His testimony was that his mother and his father were both addicts and drug dealers. And so therefore, heroin was in his house, was in their house all the time. At the age of 6, he said he found his father's stash. His mother and his father were intravenous drug users. And he said in his testimony, in his story, that he did what he saw his mother and father use. So if you can, your mind's eye can tying up his arm and shooting heroin in his veins like mama and daddy did, I want to say to whoever's listening, be careful to what you leave around your house.
Point well taken. Okay. You made that point earlier in your conversation.
Okay.
Definitely point well taken.
Yes, sir.
But what I want to ask you,
well, let me get to
you want to finish? Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I'm just making. Before I even got to using cocaine,
okay,
my first joint of marijuana, I was in my second year of college.
Okay.
I went to a party, and it must have been maybe 50, 60 people, house party. I went to the bathroom. I'm at the urinal. Urinating, and two brothers came in. They locked the door. And I looked over my shoulder, and they rolled up a joint, and they're smoking a joint. So when I went over to the sink to wash my hands, after I finished washing my hands, they passed the joint to me. I took it. I did what they did. I was off to the races. All right. Even though I'm a pastor, I resorted to the nightlife in Baltimore. Baltimore was known as the heroin capital of America. Some of the things that I did while I was in college, I won't have to go into all of that, but I became a criminal. I did some things, carried pistols, beat people up, robbed people, stole, burglarized. I was a terror. Why? Because that's who I was hanging with. And since I was hanging with certain people, I had to do what they did, or else they would think I was a chump and they were going to do to me what we were doing to other people. And in that process and hanging out with them, I began to use pills, hallucinogenic agents, angel dust, quaaludes, began to snort heroin, buck pills. Pills were $1 a pill. Small ones, jumbos were $2. From there, we were dealing in heroin, cutting heroin, selling it in Baltimore. I had a clothing business, and at night I would take the clothes out of my store and put them in the trunk of my car, take the tags off them, sell them like they were hot. And on one side of my trunk, I'd have my my heroin that I was selling, because it was quite lucrative. My first encounter with cocaine was in, I think it was in 1968, 1969. And the way in which I became affiliated with cocaine was because I was going to sell it. So I bought a spoon of cocaine from this friend of mine, and somehow or another I snorted a little bit of something that, and I told him, I said, man, this isn't anything inside. So I gave it back to him. That was in 1969. After I became a pastor, started, I was in seminary. I was in seminary before I started doing cocaine. I was in seminary in Washington, D.C. I came back to Baltimore, hooked up with some of my fraternity brothers who owned bars, who were dealing stuff on the street. And I went by his house, his mansion one day. They were doing cocaine. They were smoking it at that time, smoking it. And I did what they did. So I was an adult. I was caught up in that whole environment of drugs, to getting into using them, finding ways and means to get more.
Questions?
I have a question on the psychological aspect of this. Do you find that people that have a high propensity to be addicts, do you feel that they have addictive personalities to just most things? It could be food, like he's onto something like, oh, I love this restaurant. I'm going here all the time, over and over and over and over again, because you like this one item. Do you feel that they have
Addictive personality? Yes. Because
about most things.
Yeah, because everybody who drinks is not an alcoholic.
Correct.
And everybody who smokes cigarettes is not an addict, is not addicted. Everybody, I mean, you've got some people out there who will use cocaine every now and then. All right. But you get a person who's using heroin on a regular basis or smoking cigarettes on a regular basis, they're going to get hooked. Not because they are an addict, but because they have it in their genes, or because they have an addictive personality. It is because of the nature of the drug.
Yeah. No, I'm just listening to him, and I want you to go back 51 years ago. And can you remember Curtis Mayfield?
Curtis Mayfield, sure, man. The Impressions.
Yeah. You remember when he put out Freddy's Dead, the Pusher Man?
That's right.
All what you were saying relates to him.
Right.
That's what he was saying. And this is what he was saying in 71 and 72. This is 2023.
That's right.
What has changed?
What has changed? Number one, back in 1970, 71, you just couldn't drive down the street of any city and see where the drugs were. You couldn't do that. You had to know somebody. You had to know who had it.
Right.
But today, even in this city, it's like that.
That's right.
Just like that. All right. I was talking to a woman. I'm on the Pinellas opioid task force.
Oh,
okay. And we were talking about the fact that if you have a friend or relative who uses drugs, you need to have some Narcan. You need to have Narcan right with you all wherever you go. I've got it in my. Why? Because you're subject to coming across an individual who's ODing, and you can save their life.
Right.
Okay. So I was at this meeting, and I came across this lady who just happened to have some Narcan, and I got a box of it from her, and she works in the field, and she was telling me that she goes into the crack houses and deliver. And I said, you get in the crack house? She said, yeah. She said they love me because I give out needles and I give out the Narcan and all of that. Okay. And I said, okay. I said, well, if I ask you, where's the nearest crack house that you know of? She said, Martin Luther King and 15th Avenue. All right. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, if you know where it is, the police know where it is. I said, because in our communities, what the police do is they corner it. They allow it to take place in certain areas. All right. So my whole mission is to get people educated about this arena of addiction, and what's going on out there now is like nothing that's ever happened before in America. And that is what they're cutting the dope with is fentanyl, cutting it with fentanyl. All right. And 100 other things in that. But the other drug that's in there is called xylazine. All right. Xylazine is the animal tranquilizer, and xylazine raised on top of the fentanyl, but it causes your limbs to rot right on your body.
Whoa.
And that is so devastating. I heard a report about a month and a half, 2 months ago. The Attorney General was talking about what's happening in Pinellas and especially in Hillsborough County. And that is that the individuals who being most affected by the xylazine are individuals 14 and under. All right. And so therefore, so now if you want to cop some dope, all you got to do is go on the internet. You can cop it, you can cop drugs on the internet. And not only, in the city, but it's totally devastating. And our people need to know what it is and what we can do to prevent it.
Okay. We're nearing the conclusion of time here, and I want to ask you a couple of questions. Hopefully we can get them in.
Yes, sir.
We got about 3 minutes. What proved to be the turning point for you in your journey? The turning point.
Turning point in my life, because when I got clean in 1988, I wanted to die. I wanted to kill myself. I was putting myself in a position where people should have killed me, but they didn't. And what happened was, by me being a pastor, pastoring a large church in Baltimore, it was very difficult for me to live that kind of life, a hypocritical life, and it was tearing me up on the inside. So what happened was my wife, I had told my wife that if she had gone and told the people I was using, I would kill her. But she did go behind my back, went to the bishop. Long story short, I went into treatment Friday, October the 13th, 1988. There was an intervention in my life. Okay, that Friday morning where people came to my house, my relatives and people came to my house. That day I went into treatment. And ever since then, when I went into treatment, I found out that I was not a bad person. All right. I thought there was something wrong with me mentally, emotionally, physically. I mean, okay. But I found out that anybody can be an addict without it.
Yes, right.
And ever since then, I've been dedicated my life to giving hope and help to people. And if you want to get some help and hope, you can contact me on my website, www.outreach.org. You can call me at 443-250-9635, 443-250-9635. I travel this country. I do public speaking. I do keynote addresses, conferences, churches, any place, treatment centers where I can to help save a life. I do that.
Hey, Pastor, just recently, a very rich actor by the name of Matthew Perry passed away. And the question immediately turned to, was he high when he was found in his pool? And he had written a book similar to you in writing your book.
Yes.
John, capture this book for me. Capture this book. And his book was similar to yours in the sense that he was candid in talking about his drug addiction. And he was talking about it so candidly because he felt like he was helping others.
Yes.
Helping others. My question to you, and we probably have 30 seconds.
Okay.
Do we have sufficient resources, organizations, individuals in our community to deal with this issue?
Okay, my book entitled The Pipe in the Pulpit, you can go to my website, hopealiveoutreach.org to get that. The greatest resource that is missing in our community that deals with addiction through 12-step programs is the church, especially, and I get help me, Holy Ghost. I just came from Pastor Murphy's church this morning. Pastor Murphy is the only African-American church on the south side of St. Petersburg that has a 12-step program. and that is damnable. And I want that to resonate, man. If the churches in our city would get involved and have 12-step programs, AA, NA, OA, have called me to come and speak, because you have people in your congregation who are suffering in silence. I have a chapter in my book, The Pipe in the Pulpit. I mean, Beyond the Pipe in the Pulpit, suffering in silence, and you don't even know it. We can come in and educate them.
Okay, I'm sure there's a lot more to be said about the subject, but we're out of time at this point. So we want to thank our guest, Dr. Basha Jordan, for his personal and candid accounting of his drug addiction and the successful recovery. I want to thank my talented co-hosts for the valuable insight they bring to our discussions. We want to thank our listeners for tuning in to the Ray Tampa podcast on 99.1 FM, The Berg, and ask that you do so each and every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. Also, you can go to YouTube and type in the Ray Tampa podcast, and you can view them all. Finally, sponsorships are welcome. Good evening.